Hello, my name is Duncan McRae, Editor-in-Chief at Tech4G Media, and welcome to our latest webinar titled The Evolution of the Workplace and the Opportunity to Embrace New Technologies for Change. I'm just going to mention a few details about what we're going to be doing today while everyone comes in and joins us. We're going to be having a panel discussion on the likes of hybrid working and unified communications. We'll be looking at whether or not you should be streamlining your technology portfolio. We'll have some advice on how you can start your journey to modernize communications, and we'll examine the potential benefits of using a platform such as Microsoft Teams. This webinar should last no longer than 45 minutes. The plan is to have a short Q&A at the end. You should be able to see a Q&A tab on your screen. So if you've got any questions, please put them in there and we'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can towards the end of the session. If we run out of time, we'll still do our best to get your questions answered post-event. And we've got some fantastic guests with us today. We've got Paul Davidson, Chief Digital Transformation Officer at Teleware365, Steve Haworth, CEO at Teleware365, and Konstantin Denishev, also known as KD, Head of Workplace Technology at TSB Bank. I'll just briefly ask our guests to introduce themselves and explain their interest in this topic, if that's all right. Paul, would you like to introduce yourself to our lovely audience?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me. Yes, my role in Teleware is to primarily look at technologies and how we can help push the business forward. My interest in this is Microsoft Teams. I'm a huge advocate of it. And it's, trying to take our experience from Teleware365, what we've learned over the last 3 years, basically, just to see how Microsoft Teams can really help push hybrid working and enable people to work remotely.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for joining us. Steve, would you like to say hello to the audience?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Steve Haworth. I'm Chief Executive Officer at Teleware Group. My interest is from both as a business trying to use hybrid working to strategically help us run our business better, and also for our customers as we look to help them to utilize technologies such as Microsoft Teams to help them run their business better.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to the webinar. And KD, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, of course, Duncan. My name is Konstantin Denishev. I'm more commonly known in the industry as KD. I head up the workplace technology team at TSB, and as such, I'm in charge of ensuring that any technology that touches our partners is available anytime, anywhere, any device. It's easy to consume and performing well. Very happy to be on the panel. I'm here as a unified comms enthusiast and evangelist, so quite excited to be here, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, welcome to the webinar. I suppose to begin this kind of conversation about hybrid working, unified comms and all that, it's worth it first acknowledging how the workplace and how people work has changed. Obviously, during the pandemic, we had lockdowns. A lot of people worked from home, and now that people are getting back to the office, we have some companies choosing to get back to the office, some doing hybrid working, some still working remotely. So my question is, how has the COVID pandemic impacted the way in which you work, and what is your experience of hybrid working now, if that is what you're doing? KD, what's it been like for you?
It's been eye-opening for the business, and I'm sure not just for us as a business, but in general in the industry. I'm seeing trends where the COVID impact has opened up the opportunity for technology innovation in pretty much every sector. Chief information and technology officers have been expediting their strategies and roadmaps significantly due to the impact of COVID. We were in pretty good condition as a bank to react to COVID, because we had a remote desktop service, a remote desktop platform, and a unified comms platform, which we were able to provide to our partners pre-COVID. So very good condition to allow our partners to work remotely. obviously, we didn't go without challenges around capacity, challenges around performance, as I presume any other organization has gone through. COVID really opened up our eyes in terms of allowing us to do the dreaded social experiment, I guess, of allowing all of our users to work from home and to trust them that they're going to do the right thing, to trust them that they're going to be productive. Of course, depending on the business and the business units within the organization, not every business unit could work fully remotely. There are business units that are unfortunately not able to work fully remotely. For example, our contact center partners, our branch partners have been our absolute superheroes who've been serving our customers face-to-face throughout COVID. Unfortunately, that's the type of work that we couldn't necessarily have remotely, but the rest of the organization has certainly moved to a fully remote way of working, and now we're slowly starting to come back to a what we call new ways of working, or as everyone else is calling hybrid work. We've got a unique approach for this. So I truly believe that to get hybrid working right the first time will be extremely difficult. So organizations will have a challenge in front of them to get hybrid working right, and it's probably going to take anything between 6 to 24 months for organizations to test approaches and fail somewhere succeed, and then be able to draw the line and pick a strategy. What we're doing here is we are allowing our partners to decide the pace that they would like to come back to work. We are concentrating very hard at working with our facilities and property divisions, so we can organize our office accordingly, make sure it's COVID safe, make sure our meeting rooms are designed and accommodating to the new government standards, so that as and when we see our partners starting to come back in large numbers, we are ready to welcome them back in the office.
It's interesting to hear how such a big company has been coping over these past 18 months or so. Steve, you at Teleware365 will have experience of this yourselves. Obviously, it's impacted the way you guys work, but you've probably seen how it's impacted all your customers, all different sizes as well.
Yeah, I mean, from ourselves, we always did a form of hybrid working prior to the pandemic, and I think a lot of our customers were in that same boat. It was limited to certain job roles or certain people that wanted to do it. It wasn't as broadly adopted as maybe it will be in the future. I think the pandemic led us to, because we were so well set up for the technology side, then prior to the lockdown, we'd already left the office. Albeit we believed it was going to be for 2 weeks. 18 months later, no one had been back in the office. But that was kind of that work from home. There were challenges in that, in terms of having the right infrastructure at home, just physically desks and lighting and everything else. But what we saw, we just migrated to Microsoft Teams before we kind of gone into lockdown. So we had the tools and the technology, but it wasn't being used as much as all of a sudden everybody was using this technology to communicate with each other, and that started to spike. And what we saw was that use of video and other things that started to be introduced from being more remote, working from home, and trying to stay connected. And what we now find is, as we're coming back from kind of this home working to hybrid, is people's attitudes have completely changed from prior to COVID. Some want to work in the office 1 or 2 days a week that potentially were full-time in the office previously. I think everyone's got a slightly different view of what they want to do going forward, which is mean that we're going to have to create that environment that better enables people to work both remote and in the office together. I think when everyone was working at home, that collaboration was made easy because you're all in the same boat, you're all in a different room. I think now the offices weren't all, we used video before, but not to the extent we started using while we're away. So the offices aren't as geared up to video as maybe they will need to be going forward. I think that knowledge that having 2 or 3 people in the office and 1 or 2 people joining that meeting. Everyone needs to feel on a level playing field. So there will be some significant changes in the way we work going hybrid from even what happened in lockdown.
Yeah. So what kind of technology would you say companies in general need in order to make this hybrid working successful? Paul, what do you think?
Well, the technologies that we've kind of really focused on to get ourselves over the lull of it all is, we talk about working from home. Everyone's in the office. The connectivity you've got within the office, the networks, the LANs, the WANs, etc. You've got great connectivity there when you're at home. You're relying on broadband. Hopefully today, mine will be stable. But you've got mobile connectivity as well. Your mobile coverage, there's that type of connectivity as well. Businesses do provide mobile phones more from office based. We saw companies moving into that hybrid working where office phones don't have the best connectivity at home. You've got to kind of stay compliant in everything you're doing as well. That shift from home to the office, Steve mentioned there that experience is going to be consistent whether we're at home through Microsoft Teams or within the office. So that conference room equipment, how we set things up, making sure you've got the space to have those face-to-face video meetings. Most people probably just sit with a headset on, but when you get into a room with 1 or 2 people, it's quite difficult. So like I say, setting those conference rooms up properly, correctly. And then the applications to allow you to be able to communicate and collaborate correctly, as well as being productive. I think, they're 2 of the key things where Microsoft Teams has really helped us, in the fact being it is very simple to use. We can collaborate on documents, as well as meetings and whiteboards and things like that. And it's been able to, the technology we use, we have to start and think around how employees can adopt it, how they can onboard it far easier than what they have done in the past. Like I said, it's around that consistent experience, and Microsoft Teams and other UC platforms do provide that simplification of how people work.
Yeah. So KD, do you have anything to add to that? But also, what kind of challenges have you faced from a tech perspective?
Yeah, of course. So my 2 founding principles for digital workplace strategy, regardless of where I've worked in my previous career opportunities, is I always work off of end user experience. It's pivotal for my strategy, and the 2 pillars of that strategy have always been, provide the services to my users based on the add-to-add concept, or anytime, anywhere, any device, as well as try to provide services off of a single pane of glass wherever possible. The more integrated, the better, because integration challenges in siloed environments can have great impact on user experience in certain scenarios. In certain scenarios, not so much. So, as I mentioned earlier on, we were very well prepared from a service access perspective, because we had the ability and the platform to provide to our users to consume services based on our virtualized platform from a desktop service perspective. We were at the time, kicking off the implementation of Teams. We were at the end of the pilot phase for Teams. Obviously, as pretty much any other organization on the planet at the time, we had to turn the lights on pretty much immediately. Probably one of the biggest challenges for us, as I'm sure for other organizations, was training and adoption, making sure that users understand the change, because the change happened literally, it's Monday, you're in the office, everything is normal. Tuesday, you now need to work from home. Your new unified comms video conferencing platform is Microsoft Teams, and these are the difference between Skype for Business Online and Teams, and you need to now start looking into using that as your main communications platform and email as backup. So training and adoption was a real challenge for us to make sure that we can touch all of our users, make sure that they understand why we're making the change, making sure that they are on board with the change, and ensuring that they understand we haven't just given them a new shortcut on their desktop, which equals them having to spend a lot of time learning a new platform and therefore adding more workload to them on their day-to-day basis, but rather we're giving them a new solution that will make their life easier, and we had to make sure that we explained it in a way that makes that and highlights that to our users, makes it clear. Teams has been and still is, and going forward will be pivotal in terms of communication during the new ways of working or hybrid. We use pretty much any modality from a Teams perspective outside of contact center, so we've adopted it pretty well. The integration, the ease of use is phenomenal. Our users have a single experience on mobile, on desktop / laptop, on virtualized environment, i.e. whether it's going to be VDI or a XenUp deployment, it's still the same. It's the same look and feel. We've got meeting rooms with Microsoft Teams, with Poly X Series units where our partners can book a meeting room. They can walk in. It's a one-button start meeting. It's as zero-touch experience as we could possibly got it to. Obviously integrated with Microsoft Teams natively. So again, preserves that user experience, preserves that user journey, and ensures that once we are successful in getting our users trained and have them adopting the technology, that will cover us for unified comms, collaboration, desktop voice, and video conferencing, which is a big thing. Compare that to having to test, to train and adopt our partners, for all of these services separately, because we could have separate technologies. Weighing the two, at least in my mind, feels a bit impossible in terms of pros and cons, because having Microsoft Teams compared to having separate silos of technology that will then have the challenge to integrate is just a lot better for us as an organization, and pretty sure everyone else that is enjoying those benefits.
Yeah. So you mentioned the pros and cons there. So we mentioned quite a lot of the positive sides of the idea of a single unified platform versus organizational and comm silos. Steve, did you have anything to add to the pros, and are there any cons that you might like to point out to anyone?
Well, I think when you see new technologies come out, there's always this kind of best of breed, lots of early innovation, lots of small innovative companies developing new products and features, and we saw that in unified comms over the last 5-10 years. And then as the market matures, you see big platforms start to develop those capabilities and acquire those, whether it's developing them in-house or buying the companies themselves. You start to see that consolidation. And I think that happens with everything. So there's kind of early adopters typically go with that best of breed, and then you get that kind of scale coming on that unified platform. I think the difference with this time round is, I mean, we saw it with Skype for Business and a phone system. You would have run those as two individual platforms just a few years ago. Now Teams is capable of doing it all. You see that move to that. I think that's normal, has happened every time with every technology. I think, as I was saying, the difference this time is we're starting to see pieces of these technologies integrate across multiple stacks of what was historically silos. So rather than whole applications, you're into little bits of data all being mashed together into you might have a different single pane of glass, as Constantine talked about it, but you might have a different one to me, depending on job role. In order to pick and choose those elements, just having API integration is really, really difficult to solve. By having a common platform, it enables you to do some of these new interesting ways of delivering a better customer experience and a better employee experience without having to worry about the security and the data pieces. I think the silo piece with APIs is entirely possible, and some people are running that quite successfully. I think as you start to get into these more configured experiences, shall we call it, I think you're going to find that those that are on multiple platforms will come a little bit unstuck, and the actual security and data aspects of that will just become a nightmare.
Paul, what does a unified communications infrastructure look like to you, and is it actually something that businesses should be striving for?
Most definitely, all businesses should be striving for that single unified communications platform. What does it look like at present? I'm sure, as Steve's touched upon, there's a lot of, and Constantine, there's a lot of siloed infrastructure already out there. Bringing all that together, what does it look like to me? We are in Microsoft Teams. It is simple. It's cloud-based. It's easy to use, not just from an employee perspective, but from an administration perspective as well. By moving to Teams and getting rid of our PBX and all the rest of it, we've reduced our security footprint. We don't have to manage legacy contracts. We're not having to manage devices anymore. We just use headsets, or I use my mobile phone. Moving away from all the legacy platforms. Even if you've got multiple means of communication, so you might still have Zoom, you might still use Slack. Moving away from all of that, you're just simplifying that experience from a user's perspective, as well as IT strain on that. It's easy to deploy, and it's, as Constantine says, it's just that right way to move. So unless you've got anything further to add to that, Constantine.
Yes, Paul, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Simply by us making that strategic decision, to move and invest in Microsoft even further than we did last year. Last year we decided to move from an E365 E5 license to an M365 E5 license, which unlocked a lot of benefits for us, from the opportunity for us to introduce Teams Voice, which it got in line with our COVID response strategy in terms of try to remove all personal devices from the desk in the offices and move towards a personalized device use, i.e. headsets instead of handsets, for example. I touched on the as zero touch as possible meeting room experience, etc. But you made a really good point around reducing the investment in terms of security, getting those different types of security services that you would have had as legacy, multiple different vendors having to support those, having to buy separate licenses compared to what an M365 E5 license could give you. For example, advanced security from anything as simple as PIM all the way up to B2B, Defender for Office, for Defender for Desktop, etc. But also it unlocks the opportunity for some of the latest Microsoft technologies as AVD, Azure Virtual Desktop. So that type of strategic thinking will definitely help organizations towards unifying that experience, but at the same time unifying their infrastructure or cloud infrastructure nowadays in the background.
Yeah, and just on the back of that as well is, Microsoft are pushing so many features out there at the moment.
Yeah.
Compliance is a big thing in the banks, call recordings, etc. And moving into that unified comms piece helps you standardize how you manage your compliance and security. So, it certainly helped us with some of our customers as well.
Guys, we are just over halfway through the webinar and we haven't had an argument yet. So come on, we've got 20 minutes to sort this out. I might as well remind the audience that you are welcome to ask any questions in that little Q&A tab. And even if we don't get the time to finish to answer your questions within the webinar, we can get back to you post-event to get them answered. Okay, so if an IT manager is thinking about implementing this for a company, what steps do they need to take? Paul, what are your thoughts on
that? From our experience of working with our customers, we really do spend time up front on trying to get them to understand what their, first and foremost, what is their system, what's their functionality requirements that they need to cater for. And then also doing that user mapping, understanding what the personas are within the business to really understand what features are going to get used where, what numbers. And that all helps to start and look at your migration strategy of how you can start to move user groups across. Maybe you might want to do a trial for a couple of months just to see how it works, understand the benefits, what page you go through. Also doing that upfront thinking also helps you to think about what integrations you may want into other third parties and being able to access certain data. Constantine mentioned you may have a contact center which is sat there, and again, you can move the business first, get your users onboarded, get them going, but leave your contact center, and then slowly start to do that. There are providers out there at the moment with Microsoft Teams fully integrated cloud contact centers, and again, it's bringing that agent interface and the supervisor interface back into Teams, so you've got one single interface for users to use. And again, that user adoption and engagement. We ran a trial for probably 6 months. We tracked data in Power BI to see how Teams was using within the office. Microsoft does provide a lot of information in the admin console to kind of give you that insight as to, are people really engaging with that technology? We did see Microsoft Outlook was still being used heavily. However, that shift the day everyone started work from home, Outlook dropped and Teams just spiked. So again, try and look at the data that's available to see how you can help employees engage and use the. If you just push it out there, people won't use it to its full functionality. Microsoft Teams is more than just voice, the whole collaboration, how you use documents, sharing documentation, working around that piece. So there's some huge benefits to that piece.
And how would someone go about future-proofing their unified comms? Steve, have you got any advice on that?
Yeah, I think there's the obvious pieces of looking at the vendors' sort of future roadmaps and strategies and mapping them to your own. But I think looking at unified comms as a standard old silo would be a mistake. You've really got to look, the way the future of this industry is going is more integrated into business processes. That when you start to move into future technologies like AI and other capabilities, you will look at that across more than just a single piece of the technology. So I think making sure you've considered how it will be impacted in the future across the other processes that you've got in the business, and not just looking at not just the silos within unified communications, but other silos you may have within the business. Make sure that the system itself supports open interfaces so that you can add, either through partners or by yourself, add capability and functionality that maybe isn't there day one. If you wanted to add that for a specific, if your business has very specific needs, then you may be able to tailor that as well. So making sure that it's got the interfaces, you've got the programming capabilities around it, and it integrates with that future digital strategy rather than just siloed as a unified communications platform.
We've obviously mentioned Microsoft Teams quite a bit so far. I've used Microsoft Teams. I've used other platforms like Facebook Workplace and Slack. So what are the particular benefits of using Microsoft Teams to unify your comms? Who would like to answer that? Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, I've used Slack, I've used Zoom, I've used Microsoft Teams. For me, Teams, it's got more about it. We've not just from a communications platform piece, but from the way we've started to structure our data differently. The way we can access data. I can access any data from any device at any time, anywhere. I can make a call. The benefits from the business side of things is it's been so easy to adopt it and start to use it. We've seen a big shift in people who have been so familiar with using Microsoft Outlook to communicate with customers. It's a slow process. They've improved that communication process with customers by creating a group chat and having documentations there ready that they can collaborate on, straight away. From a security perspective, I know that everything we do within Teams is secured by Microsoft AD. We've got the ability to record the meetings. We've got transcriptions in there now. We pull all the notes together. So if someone's not available for a meeting, they've got the time to catch up later on. So there's some huge benefits in there. But for me, it was just the simplicity that allowed the business to make that shift into remote working without a huge increase in training and education for users.
Yeah. KD, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll allow myself to take the public some years back. So I was present at the Microsoft unveiling of Office 365 E5 as a license and the ability to Microsoft to deliver, telephony through to Skype for Business. And I vividly remember one of the buzzwords amongst the audience at the time was, it's great, in terms of the innovation that Microsoft was bringing to the table and their drive towards improvement of their service. But one of the things that jumped out as a conversation and like I said, as a buzzword, was there were so many applications in Office 365 at the time. You open your My Apps at Microsoft and you get greeted with like 15, 20 applications that no one really kind of had an understanding of what to do, when to use OneNote, when to use Word, when to use Delve, when to use Power BI, etc. So Microsoft clearly have taken a strategic way forward in terms of providing that single pane of glass that everyone's looking for in the face of Teams. And as Paul very well put it, Teams is not just a voice platform. It's not just a unified comms platform. It's not just a collaborations platform. Microsoft Teams is the single pane of glass for anything Office 365, at least in my opinion. Microsoft have been investing very heavily into Teams. I think I read somewhere last year or the year before that it's obviously one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing service they've ever provided, but it's probably the heaviest investment that Microsoft have in any other of their services and technologies they currently are looking to go to market with. So yeah, having that ability to provide to your users, i.e., provide a single pane of glass for all of these services, UC, VC, Collab, analysis through Power BI, chatbots, integration through API with third-party applications. I think it's absolutely invaluable for businesses in this day and age.
Paul, I think you mentioned earlier that it wasn't really good enough to just push the platform out to employees, as they probably won't use the full functionality of it. How can companies ensure employees are on board with their hybrid working and unified comms journey? So, Steve, you've probably had first-hand experience of this.
So in terms of getting people on board, what we found was, as Paul mentioned earlier, analysing the data of how these things have evolved within the business. And we found we used a tool for helping training and making sure everyone had a structured training program for the introduction. Microsoft Teams. But the other bit that really made a difference to us was actually committing to it. I think there was a couple of things. We launched our Teams Voice, so we enabled our platform to be the single communications platform for speaking to our customers as well as our colleagues, and that really increased the usage and the adoption because people were going into that one place to use the platform. I think we moved from using multiple like Outlook and SharePoint and various different communication methods to using Teams as the single platform for our internal communications, which again made people come on. We utilized the video pieces. I myself was putting out kind of a video every Friday to update people on what was happening with the business. There was social elements that were getting used to really communicate around the business what was going on. So I think that piece of that onboarding, there's several elements to it, but I think the main piece is if you commit to it and make that your goal, it happens very easy. If you put it as another option in amongst various pieces, then it becomes very fragmented and difficult to evolve.
Yeah. KD, have you got any advice around this?
In terms of adoption?
Making sure employees are on board with it.
Yeah, absolutely. In my opinion, it needs to be a top-driven conversation, i.e., top of the organization-driven conversation. Having that buy-in from the senior leadership of the organization is really crucial for adoption of any technology, not just Microsoft Teams. But the one thing I can offer to the audience is probably don't just rely on your built-in training and adoption practices, i.e., ensure that you've got an omni-channel comms with your people. What I mean by that is, don't just think that having a massive library of content on your intranet or SharePoint Online is enough, or sending emails and reminders is enough. Having a chatbot deliver messages to your users based on presence, etc., is enough. I think you need to provide your partners with the ability to pull information, but also get them excited about the technology and ensure they understand the benefits. They understand what's in there, what's in it for me, right? It's all great, it's all shiny, it's a new application, but what's in it for me as a user? How will this make my life easier, and why should I give it 5 minutes of my day to even consider it? If you get this point right, and then supplement that with an omni-channel distribution of your training and adoption materials, and ensure that users are excited about the new technology, have your senior leadership backing that statement and that vision, I think that's a recipe for success.
Brilliant. Now, Teleware365, you have a workshop available for our audience, don't you?
Yeah, we've made it available. If you want to go on and book, the links will be made available afterwards. They're on the homepage of the website. If you go to www.teleware.com/Microsoft-modernize-communication-workshop, that link will be provided to you. But if you go there and book, what that's about is really to showcase some of the modern communications that you get with using Microsoft Teams. It should give you the knowledge and capabilities to help build out a plan to successfully deploy and adopt Microsoft Teams and the phone system within your organization. It'll also touch upon some of the other technologies that you might want to integrate into there, and also some of the bits that we can do around in enhancing on top of the basic Teams platform, whether that be through chatbots and Power Automate or some of the third-party applications that we plug in.
Okay, let's see if we have some questions. We do have some questions. So we have just a few minutes to try and answer one or two of them, I think. Let's see. Teams is good in reducing complexity, having all at one place, but it is not the solution for everything. unfortunately. No, you might disagree. What products or technologies do you use on top of Teams?
So, as I was mentioning before, there's a lot of things around Teams that you might. So, I think Konstantin mentioned earlier, contact center. That is one place where we do use our technology and third-party technologies to enhance the capability. Obviously, Microsoft have just announced improvements in the voice elements of their contact center product as well. So they're doing more in that space. Compliant call recording is something that we do externally to the pure Microsoft Teams piece. We also have other integrations. So, for example, using chatbots to integrate with HR systems, so we can very simply ask. I noticed one of the questions asking about how do you tell whether you're in the office or not. So we do that within a chatbot that we've developed. So you can ask, is this colleague available? Are they in the office today? Will they be in the office on Monday? We use that to integrate and book days out of the office and integrate into HR, as I've said, but lots of other systems. So we'll tailor things and we'll pick best of breed products and we'll develop the pieces that we need to add that extra functionality. I know specifically yourself, Konstantin, what you use within the bank on top of Microsoft Teams.
So Teams is the foundation of our end user or digital workplace services, but of course, we do have our integrations with other applications that we're using. Some based on APIs and some based on the fact that they are available outside. Built in from the Microsoft Teams App Store. We also use bots in the organization that are helping us with, as you pointed out, a few examples with HR. So yeah, predominantly API integration or applications that are already available in the store or chatbots. I'm sorry I'm being vague, but I can't really discuss the details of the applications that we are integrating with.
Yeah, and like you said, just additional one, the Power Platform, off the back of Microsoft Teams, it's all available. You've got the Power BI in there, Power Automate. We do automate a lot of processes through that. We have approval processes which trigger into Teams to simplify things. So they might not be third party, they are Microsoft related, but we do use that technology.
One thing that also popped to mind, Paul, when you mentioned Power Automate and Power Platform in general, is we also use Teams to automate our technology forums, anything from a discussion to submission to approval to implementation, raising relevant internal requests and so on and so forth. A lot slicker experience with Teams compared to pre-Teams, everything separate. You need to email so and so to get this form filled in. Once you get this form filled in, you need to go to so and so to get it signed off, and so to forward it to the other team, and the other team to do something else. So Teams backed up by the Power Platform is a very powerful tool that can help organizations be very, very productive in their ways of working.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to mention is the monitoring reporting of Teams in the admin center compared to what it was with Skype for Business and previously is just huge. The difference, the ease of use of being able to look at someone's reported poor experience, or even in a proactive way to find a poor experience in a call or in a meeting, and very easily at your fingertips find what went wrong, is, I think, phenomenal.
We are pretty much out of time, but Paul, what would you say are the key points you hope the audience take away from this webinar?
In summary, hopefully Steve and Konstantin will agree with these. I think first and foremost, Steve touched upon, it's got to be a holistic approach. You've got to understand what your users are wanting from UC and what those system features and requirements are, as first and foremost. Do it as a holistic approach. From that, then start to build on that consistent employee experience, whether that's at home, whether it's out on the road, or whether it's in the office. Embrace hybrid working. Don't try not to fight against it through the use of Microsoft Teams. Engagement of employees and the business, as Constantine says, it's got to be a top down, but we've got to get those employees engaged in it through storytelling and showing examples of how it can improve their life. And finally, we've got to, everyone's got to commit to make that change to work differently in the environment we're in today.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. And that is all we have time for today. Thanks to all of our guests for the fantastic discussion, and big thanks to everyone who has joined us today. This webinar will be live on, it will be on demand. You'll get an email about that tomorrow, and it should include the link to that webinar, that workshop we mentioned earlier on. So thanks again to everyone, and take care.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.